Hello, hello, hello. The truth and nothing but the truth, so help me God. So, the story is that we had a really good question. The question is, can I talk myself into change? And the answer to the question is, like most things in life, it depends. First of all, it depends what is your issue. Some issues are very, very difficult. A lot of us struggle with issues that we really need help. We need to talk to a therapist. Again, I always say it's not the therapist. In fact, studies show this. The therapist himself makes no difference. It's the quality of the relationship. So if you don't find that you feel comfortable with a therapist, don't waste a penny. Get out of there. Just cut it. You have no obligation to the person. Find somebody you do feel comfortable with, because that's the only way you will change in a therapy session. Some things need help. I mean, a lot of people are addicted and they can't get themselves. But generally speaking, the fundamental difference between a mature person and an immature person is this point, which is, to what extent are you in charge of yourself? And the process of being mature really goes through three stages. First of all, life itself goes through three stages. It's really a fundamental concept of Kabbalah. The first stage is the stage of development. We develop a very powerful ego, which is really a love for self, which is important. It's like the gas in the car. Without gas, you could have the greatest car. You ain't going nowhere. So it's important to have a self-love. Unfortunately, we find with depression, which is a self-hate, that we lose all desires, because all the things that we want are really based on the fundamental ego, which is a self-love. And when you love someone, you desire to give them what they love, which is why in depression, because we don't like ourselves anymore, so we don't desire to give to ourselves. So it's a very deep, important subconscious thing. However, if you just have an ego, like a child throwing a tantrum, you expect to get your way, then you're immature. And a lot of people in the Western world, in fact, are highly immature. I marvel at the Mexican immigrants that come here, they work hard, whereas a lot of people that are born in this country can't get their act together, and that's because they're immature. And Freud discusses immaturity in a very good way. He says that it's basically he calls it like the pleasure principle versus reality principle. So we all want to feel good. So to feel good, we live in a fantasy, and the fantasy is that the world will take care of us. But that's not a reality. The world will not take care of you. You've got to take care of yourself. You got to think hard. You got to pray hard, and you got to work hard. And so reality is when the how things work, and accepting that that's how things work is more important than the pleasure principle. So in conclusion, we have to, in order to get to reality, something has to break, because we don't get out of pleasure until the pain is worse than the pleasure. That's why a drug addict has to hit rock bottom. Now, what's the difference between the day before you hit rock bottom and the day after? Is the only difference is the day after he wants to change more than he doesn't. So there has to be a period in life, and most people go through this. A lot of people in the comfort of Western society don't, and they sort of never grow up. But you have to go through a period of really being kind of crushed, which is really just psychologically. You realize that you're not going to get your way in life. That's in a way what they call by men midlife crisis, which I think happens in the Western world again in kind of midlife, because in other countries they get that message quite young and they don't have the midlife crisis. But the midlife crisis is where you realize your fantasies are just that. And so once you gain a certain element of self-discipline and self-control, and that's mainly by telling yourself what to do, and also you're out of the fantasy principle, you're in the reality principle, then in general it's like a horse and a rider. The more the rider rides the horse, the more the horse becomes accustomed to rider, the more the rider gains control over the horse. So I wish you good luck. You can change. I truly hope that you do change. And I'll leave you with one important tip. As long as our ego is strong, actually you can't change, because the ego says, I have to have my way. It's like a spoiled child. They're so busy trying to manipulate everyone and get their way that don't have really rational thinking. They don't have place for, like we said, reality thinking. So one of the ways you get rid of your ego, according to Jewish mysticism, you have to think about everything stupid you've ever done. And when you have a really nice list of everything stupid that you've done, then you ask God for forgiveness. You feel better about it. You're not meant to walk around with low self-esteem, but it just humbles you enough for the rational mind to take over.